So you've decided that you're going to be stripping the thicker insulated copper wire that you get. And you've decided that it's probably worth the investment to get a motorized wire stripper. Okay, well, I made that decision a while back, and here's what I bought. So let's dive in and take a look at just how well it works and kind of sometimes doesn't. First, let's rewind the clock a little bit. This is what we're talking about. It was a couple years ago when I made the decision that I was going to buy a motorized wire stripper. And I hadn't seen a lot of video comparisons on the various types that were out there. So I went to Amazon and I looked around and I decided, well, here's a pretty good wire stripper. It looks like it's got some quality to it. The price was right. You'll find these anywhere from a little bit less than $170 and over $200. So I said, all right, let's go ahead and do it. So this is the one that I bought. I don't remember what I paid, probably about the same price. And as you can see, it is motorized and it's got a screw for aligning the blade up and down for the thickness of the wire. It's got a guard, standard ON/OFF switch. So I started stripping with this, and because this was the first motorized stripper I had, I went from doing it by hand to this. Boy, I thought this was a huge upgrade, and I still use it frequently. So, there's nothing terribly wrong with this thing, but as you're going to see, sometimes there can be some challenges. One of the first things that you're going to have to do is to adjust the stripper for the diameter of the wire and the thickness of the insulation. So for that reason, I recommend that you batch your wire so that you have types that are as close to each other as possible. That way you minimize the amount of time that is spent adjusting, readjusting as you go through your wire. So you can see I've got a box, beat up cardboard box full of wire, very similar in diameter and thickness of insulation. And I'm going through the tuning up alignment process here with the stripper. With this particular stripper, it's relatively easy. There's this screw handle on the top that moves the blade up and down, and then there's a grooved wheel that grabs hold of, or is supposed to grab hold of the wire and pull it through the blade to cut the insulation off. Now, ideally, the blade will cut through the insulation and not the copper, and you can very easily peel the insulation off of the cable. But this can take some trial and error and tweaking and adjusting to get it just right. So that's why you want to batch your wire. Now, the other thing that I recommend is you have a bin ready to put the wire in after you've stripped it, so that you've got all your copper going in one bin and another bin ready for the insulation, which is just going to be trash. Now, as you can see, sometimes the locking nuts get turned down too tight, so here I've had to get a pair of channels to loosen things up a little bit to complete the tweaking. Here's another view of that setup so you can clearly see now the flow of the work. I've got the box with the wire, I've got a bin for the copper to go into after I pull off the insulation, and a place to throw the insulation. Now, in a perfect situation, I wouldn't have to push the wire one end and then pull it out the other end. The wheel inside of the stripper would simply pull the wire through, so that all I would have to do is get it started. But I have found with this particular wire stripper that I have to do a push-pull maneuver where I'm pushing, especially with the thicker wires, where I'm pushing it most of the way through and then pulling it the rest of the way. What I have also found is that sometimes if I don't put the blade down as deep, it will pull it through all by itself, but then I have to make 2 passes. So I'm debating with this particular wire stripper, what's the better answer? The push-pull maneuver or the double pass maneuver? With the thicker wire cable, you also want to cut it into manageable lengths. So this is a typical coil that I'll get from the cell phone tower company. Way too long to try to feed that all the way through, because remember, it's braided thick copper strands in there. So if I try to feed that through the way it is now, it's going to start twisting on its own, and it's going to bird nest and just become a mess. So what I do is take the coil of wire over to the workbench and then just cut manageable lengths. Now I either cut them so that a length will easily fall into the gray bin, or I can fold it in half and throw it in the gray bin. Now here you see me using the vice grip channels rather than my fingertips to separate the insulation. If you're going to be doing a large batch of this over and over and over again, it can get a little bit hard on the fingertips peeling the insulation apart. So having some channels or pliers or something there just saves your fingertips a little bit of dealing with that. Yeah, it takes maybe a little bit more time to grab hold of it, but it's a little bit easier on the fingertips there. Of course, this all comes back to the question of, is this worth doing? Is the return on investment worth the effort? Now, again, if you have a lot of wire, and especially if you have thick wire to cable gauge kind of stuff, a motorized wire stripper is definitely a worthwhile investment. You can see that I'm going through this pretty quickly. And there's a pretty significant payout difference. My non-ferrous yard at the time of this recording was paying me $3.71 a pound for bare bright. Insulated number 1 was going for $2.65 a pound. So we're talking close to $1 difference per pound. Is my time worth $1 a pound difference? Yes, because I batch the cable and I'll spend, a couple hours going through knocking it out. So yeah, because that bin will easily become a $200 bin of bare bright copper wire. The other thing that I would like to point out here is I have the wire stripper on what used to be a medical stand. This medical stand would have had either IV bags hanging on it, pumps, some other medical equipment. It can wheel around easily. It's very stable. I do this because when I'm not stripping wire, I can move the wire stripper out of the way, I can move the wire out of the way, and I've got a nice open area to move back and forth in the shark cage. Many people will mount these to their workbenches or to a stationary platform and set up a stripping station, dedicated to that area. So it's just a question of what works best for you. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there are plenty of other strippers that you can look at. Stripmeister is a very well-respected name in the wire stripping industry, a Canadian company, and they make a number of varieties. A channel called Thumbprint did a really good comparison between the Stripmeister and the one that I'm using. If you haven't checked out Thumbprint's channel, go ahead. He's got a lot of really cool stuff. Then there's also a device. Now, I don't know if this is the same one or not, But Canadian Treasure Hunter uses, if it isn't this one, it's similar to this. It's a larger system. It has multiple inlets where you can put in the different size wire cable, and it knocks them out pretty well as well. So you want to do some research and think about what works best for you. If you are on a budget and you're just getting into this, then go with the $170 some odd eBay one. But accept that you're going to have some issues. So, you got the push-pull thing that I was demonstrating. But because these are made in China and they're being distributed under different brand names, you're not going to find good support for these. If you have an issue or a challenge with them, it might be hard to find spare parts. So, that's sort of the trade there. If you know that you're going to be at this for a while and you've got a lot of wire coming in, I would actually suggest looking at the Stripmeister. It's just a question for me now of putting it in the list of priorities. Here's the comparable Stripmeister. Right away you can see, as of the day of this recording, that the Stripmeister is $749, and that's on sale down from $949. But here's the difference. Canadian company, you can reach back to them for support. According to the video that was dubbed by Thumbprint, it's a much higher quality machine. It's a much better machine to operate, smoother operations, setup. Blade is better. The wheel that grabs the cable and pulls it through is designed better. So I have not used one yet, but I trust Thumbprint's review, and it looks like a really good machine that is definitely worth the $749. And no, this is not a sponsored video, other than the fact that I really like what I saw of the Stripmeister. I have no affiliation with Stripmeister. I'm just really seriously thinking about getting one. The links are going to take you to more scrapping videos, and a little round one in the middle is the icon to help you subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.